see, did I see any hands for a karakia? Yes, I did. Good.
It's one, I think. Menino. Kia horo timarina. Kia whakapapa ponamu te moana. He huarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai. Tātou I tātou katoa. Hui e, tai ki e. May peace be widespread. May the sea be like greenstone, a pathway for us all this day. Let us show respect for each other, for one another. Bind us all together.
That's a very beautiful one, Barbara. Thank you very much. Okay, now I can see that, I think the people on the screen are mainly members who know each other, but Lisa Bridson, do you know people here?
Really, but that's okay. So
we're absolutely delighted to see a new face. And let me introduce myself. I'm Joanna Santa Barbara, the chair. And would you just like to just say a few words about who you are?
So I did come to another meeting, I'm sure, of this group. So I'm the new environmental sustainability coordinator at Nelson Marlborough Health. And we've only been in Nelson for a couple of months. So before that we were in Europe, but before that we were in the Hutt Valley. So new to the area, but not new to sustainability.
Oh, we welcome you most warmly. Really very pleased to have you with us. Now, as Marlene knows, I was planning to split people up briefly for an intro, just an intro to each other. But from what I can see on the screen, it is the case that nearly everyone on the screen knows each other pretty well. A couple of exceptions, but most people know each other pretty well. So I'm thinking that I won't do that, but what I will do is introduce one other new face to you, and that's Christina Simkinen, and who's waving to us there. And I'll just say a little bit about Christina. Christina has just been appointed as a part-time paid person to be the volunteer and project coordinator, volunteer coordinator and project encourager, and also to help with funding applications. And Christina and her husband and two daughters moved to New Zealand from the US a couple of years ago, where she previously worked as a marine ecologist in the Smithsonian Institution. And Christina has lots of volunteer experience, for example, with citizen science and women in science, and also lots of project management experience, communications and fundraising. But I think that from a very good collection of applicants for this position, we were very impressed by Christina's deep passion to make a difference. So I'll just ask Christina to introduce yourself with a few words.
Kia ora, everyone. Thank you so much for such a beautiful introduction. I'm so grateful to be here and to learn and meet you all. It's such an interesting kind of moment in my life, a bit of a pivot from a purely kind of research career, where I was essentially beginning to feel like I was documenting the destruction of the planet just continually. And I see great value in research. It's deeply important for all of us. But for me, I started to find that I had this growing interest in the people on the planet instead. And the more and more that I realized essentially within myself that we're one with nature and nature is one with us, and how we are with ourselves and how we are with each other is how we are with nature. I began to sort of pivot into working with people more and more. And yeah, that's kind of what's brought me here. Not necessarily to New Zealand, that was more of a move because of my husband's work. He works at the Cawthorne Institute. He's a marine ecologist as well. But yeah, so it's brought me to the forum and what's important to me at the moment. So I'm really keen to work with you all, and thank you so much for having me and for the welcome.
Well, we do indeed welcome you, Christina, and very much look forward to your presence in the forum. Okay, so the kaupapa of the hui tonight is the usual elements of gathering, catching up with forum activities and knowledge, but with a particular focus on extending our skills in conducting good climate conversations. More on that in a few minutes, and there's one little treat for you in store there with some of our brilliant actors who've developed a little role play for your interest. But let's start, as we have come to do recently, with just sharing any successes that have come in our own arenas of action since we last met a month ago. Any things that strike you as a step forward, an accomplishment that you're pleased with? And I'll try to catch what hands come up here. And while you're overcoming your inner modesty, I will just mention to you one interesting success, and that is with the Regional Emissions Project. Our forum member, Daniela Ramirez, who's on the Nelson City Council staff, has secured several $1,000s worth of pro bono consultation from a professional who's extremely experienced in measuring community and regional emissions in New Zealand, which is really a valuable asset to add to that particular project. Okay. Anyone? Yes, Bruce.
I could just say that I was very impressed by some work that Jenny Easton and Olivia were doing the other day, particularly on flooding in Nelson. Yeah, I thought there was very high quality, well argued stuff, and it deserves to be listened to and taken note of. That's all.
Thank you, Bruce. Yeah. Any other successes over this period? Yes.
Barbara.
Yep.
Yeah,
Barbara has
hello,
a hand up.
everyone.
Tim.
It's Tim here. I'm part of the transport group, and I'm not sure if there's anyone else from our group here. Just to acknowledge the work that Bruno's doing in keeping us together. We meet fortnightly on Zoom. And I think our big success is we are engaging with both the Tasman and Nelson councils. And we do have council officers now attending our meetings and sharing information. So not a lot of progress other than a huge number of submissions, but there is a pathway forward there, which is, yeah, I think gives a cause for some optimism. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Sorry.
Bruce.
Sorry, me again. I really should mention Jack Santa Barbara and the great audience that he's getting with his articles for Newsroom. So please pass that on.
I shall. He has briefly a headache and he is probably going to join us shortly. And I'll be sure to tell him that, Bruce. Thank you. Yeah. And Gillian, and then Tim. Oh, Kendra, then Kendra. Gillian.
Kia ora. I'm here with the Restoring Nature and Storing Carbon group. And our success is that we have been working with a small group, Friends of Snowdon's Bush, to protect the Totara bush block in Brightwater, and made an application to Te Uru Rako for funding for a planting, and was successful with that. So we have our first community planting there on next Sunday, the 3rd of October, starting at 9:30. I'd like to extend an invitation to anybody from the Climate Forum who'd like to come. It won't be a big planting, it's quite a small planting, but it's just a start to forming an interested group to do a little bit more restoration planting there, and there'll be some predator control going on as well. So very nice to get the funding application approved and to get this project off the ground.
Thank you, Gillian. We all thank you and that group for its ongoing work in that arena. And the linkage of predator control to planting is becoming ever more obviously important.
Thank you.
And Kendra.
Hello, everyone. I wanted to just give a little update from the working group, How to Stay Healthy and Connected. We met in Washburn Gardens when we were in the beginning of level 2, which was quite fun. Nice to see Robin on here tonight, and Barb's in the group with Julie and Christine Gillespie. We've been shaping up a little workshop, and so we're hoping that when we come together in November in person, that we might be able to do that workshop. It's a 1 hour. And we're particularly sort of targeting at brand new people to the forum, as well as people who might be actually interested in offering and training to do that workshop. So it's very much a pilot. We felt like you were a soft and easy audience to first present to that would then give us feedback, and we could reshape and develop it as we might. So just wanted to let you know about that. And the other delight that I've had today was receiving a book in the mail from Paul Hawken, Regeneration, How to Beat Climate Change in 1 Generation. Huge number of contributors to that, but a very readable, reasonably large format book. I'll send a link maybe to Marlene and she could circulate that around, but I'm really excited to read his latest work because he's been a very important sort of mentor for me over the years. Thank you.
Oh, that's really worth knowing. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Barb, go ahead.
Just one more, and that is to say thank you to you, Joanna, for all your efforts, and the article in the paper showing how the forum led by you is building bridges with the farming community and so on. Very, very positive stuff. So
thank you. Thanks, Barb. Thanks. That was fun. Okay. Oh, I think, Anne. Anne, go ahead.
At the risk of embarrassing Julie, Tim earlier mentioned the large number of submissions that are being done. Julie has been trawling a large number of websites and pulling together all the relevant submissions and posting them for all of us. So I just like to recognize Julie for the amazing work that she's doing.
Bravo for Julie Cave. Yeah, it's very helpful. Oh, Colin.
Yeah, thank you. Something not of my own doing, but something which I'm quite excited about is that I was talking to Rachel Sampson the other day, and she is on the point of persuading Nayland College to take up her sustainability program, which I would be a part of if it gets off the ground, because they have a microforest on their program. And she's very excited about this possibility, particularly if Nayland get it off the ground, then we want to spread it to other schools in the neighborhood. And that will be a great input. And the schools group, I'm sure, will have a lot to contribute to that.
That's a really important project, the schools group and Rachel's work alongside it. Excellent. All right, I think, yes, Peter.
Okay, this is sort of advanced notice of a meeting that Jack Santa Barbara and I are cooking up with a Professor Justin Hodgkiss from the McDiarmid Institute. It's on the 20th of October in the evening by Zoom. And the idea is for us to present a summary of an article about renewable technologies, which is quite a worrying article about the unsustainability of renewables, and to get Professor Hodgkiss to comment on that article in the light of the research that he's doing and his whole team into advanced materials which will have application in the future for renewable technologies. Yeah, and then we'll have a question and answer session after that. So 20th of October, and we'll put it up on the events list on the website.
Excellent initiative. Thank you. And David Eyre, I wonder if this is kind of pre-success, not completed success, but I wonder in the spirit of sort of catching up with each other's activities, if we might mention our work with Olivia Hyatt and Louise Blakely on a poster form of the climate action book that we four in the Climate Action Plan Group are working on. And we hope to have it ready by the November hui. We'd like to produce it by then. Okay. All right. Yes, right. Let's move on to our science spot, which Tord Kjellström has prepared for us. And over to you, Tord.
Thank you, Joanna, and thank you everyone for being in these meetings and keeping the climate change focus in our community. My job, my job today is to say a few words in 5 minutes about the IPCC report. And I assume that many of you have actually, of course, followed the discussions in the mass media about this report, which came out about a month ago. But I read it, the long introduction, about 20 pages, which is the summary for policymakers. And it's quite clear that this report is an important step forward in the knowledge of how climate change is happening. You should remember that the IPCC is a United Nations agency with 195 members, in the IPCC, and the member can only be a country. So it's almost all of the 200 countries in the world that are members of this organization. Every 5, 6, 7 years, they produce these updates on the status of climate change and how it is progressing. And this is the assessment report number 6. And what came out in August was the report from the working group 1. And this particular group is dealing with the science behind the actual climate change itself. Then there will be 2 more reports next year, one on the impacts of climate change on communities and the environment. That's working group 2. And the other one is a report on what can we do about it. So this is basically mitigation and adaptation efforts and technologies, etc. But those reports are not available yet. But in any case, the interesting thing for me personally is that I was actually working in Geneva at the World Health Organization when this organization was created. And one of my jobs during the last 4 years I was there was to be responsible for WHO's analysis of the public health impacts of climate change. And one good friend of mine who was also born in Sweden originally, he happened to be at the World Meteorological Organization responsible for linking up with the health people. So I was very familiar with, or am very familiar with this history of these reports. And what's interesting now is that in this latest report, which just came out, the words about the statistical likelihood of changes being caused by human greenhouse gas emissions and other human activities, the language is getting stronger and stronger. And for a number of these serious effects that we already know about, the increasing temperature, the increasing rainfall, the increasing loss of ice in glaciers, etc. Those effects you're all familiar with, but the language in this report is very strong. And as someone pointed out in a recent podcast that I got from Jace Hobbs, is that it's quite striking that in this report, the governments that screen this report or review this report before it is published, they have, of course, had to accept this. And if we had more, let's say, resistance amongst government against the language in the report, this would have softened up the statements, but they're very strict and very clear on what's going on with the climate. So the strong conclusions, of course, are that specific signs of climate change are already occurring, and it will get worse. And we're getting close to the maximum total amount of greenhouse gas emissions that the globe can sort of accept if we're going to stick to an increase of global temperature at less than 2 degrees. So in this sense, all governments, including our own, have now been put on notice. The other thing that's also quite clear is that methane as a greenhouse gas is a very important part of the total picture. At least a third of the global heating is caused by methane. And methane is it doesn't have such a long life in the atmosphere as carbon dioxide has, which means that, and it's also much more powerful in creating the heating, which means that actions on methane now in the short term is extremely important to start implementing. And of course, that has consequences for what we do in New Zealand in relation to land use and farming in particular. Now, I'm not going to go through all the details here, but for those who are interested in learning more about what IPCC is saying, of course, you can easily get this summary for policymakers on the internet. Just put IPCC into Google and you get there. Now, the other thing which inspired me also for this short presentation today was a webinar where the Member of Parliament for the Green Party, Julie Ann Genter, was the chair, and we had 3 scientists from New Zealand pointing out the consequences of this report more than describing the report itself. And out of this webinar, there were some takeout messages that I will finish with. And first was trust the science. And in addition, the science isn't complete. There is need to keep analyzing the problems and quantifying them as much as we can. Second issue was to develop urgent real actions. And that, of course, brings us back to our own region. We have talked a lot about climate change. Now the forum is 18 months old soon, and I think it's a good time to actually start making sure that actions are taken to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. Then we should move from a short-term perspective to a long-term perspective. Of course, there are urgent things to do immediately, but the other thing to consider is what is our world going to look like in 30 years' time, for instance. And we should think locally in relation to the action. And I feel that the forum and the actions and the plans and programs that we inspire in this region could be also an inspiration for people, of course, in other parts of New Zealand, but also outside New Zealand, in the large countries that really matter most for the planetary change, including China and India and Indonesia and the United States. And let's be hopeful that what we do, we can describe it and we can inspire people in other countries to follow the ideas that we apply here to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, that's my few comments on the IPCC report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tord. There are a few minutes for questions or comments. If anyone wants to raise anything with Tord. I'll just raise, I'll go to Kendra. Kendra.
Thank you, Tord. I'm still kind of curious about the processes that are going on with the 5 out of the 200 who are not yet connected into this IPCC process and that part of that UN agreement. What work's been done that you know of to draw them in as well?
Who are them?
Well, you said at the very beginning of your talk that there's 195 countries.
Yes.
That, yeah, and out of the 200 that we've got. So where are the other 5?
Oh, interesting question. Well, I can actually find out and let all of you know via email. But I assume it's countries like Somalia, Syria, potentially Afghanistan, etc. I'm not sure. These are countries who have possibly totally different priorities. It's not, I mean, when we had the previous president in the United States, of course, the United States was not a member, but they have come back again. So it's not any of the important countries in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions.
So China and India are both part of the 195?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's reassuring. Thank you. I thought
Yes.
they were still not. Okay, thank you.
Any other hands up for questions? Do you happen to know, Tord, when part 2 and part 3 will be released?
When you mean the other 2 reports?
Yeah.
No, I don't know, but I saw exactly. But I saw that the plan is to publish them in 2022, so that's next year. Right. And of course, my personal interest is very much in working group 2, report number 2, which deals with the impact of climate change on people's health, for instance, which is what I do research on. So I'm looking forward to that. And unfortunately, even though the process involves thousands of scientists, they actually keep these drafts very close to themselves, those who are part of the process. So I've tried to get copies of the draft as they've been developing, but I haven't received them because I'm not currently an official member. I used to be an author in the previous health chapter.
Right. Now, Colin Davis's hand was up. Unmute yourself, Colin.
Yeah, I have done. Yeah, thank you, Todd. That IPCC report makes very sobering reading and very disturbing report. I was just interested in a follow-up report. I don't know if it was related to the same thing, what came up in the news just a few days ago about our children's future being far inferior to our own as a result of climate change, which is blindingly obvious to most of us, but it seemed to be something that people could relate to and grab onto and say, wow, we better do something about it. You know, it was a kind of impetus report that got people thinking. And I just wondered what the source of that was. And I presumed it was a United Nations one. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Colin. No, I think it was the organization called Save the Children who produced that report. And I actually heard about it on the radio. Someone mentioned it. I will find out the exact reference to it and inform you all about it, because as you say, it's a good way to communicate the future troubles to bring in your children. And I usually do it myself in my lectures by showing the lifespan of a child born now. I mean, the child born now in New Zealand is almost certain to be alive in the year 2100. And that child's great-grandchild, which is in a sense a part of your family, of course. So that child's great-grandchild will be alive in the year 2200. And if you look at the scary curves in the IPCC report for things like sea level rise, etc., I mean, the worst problems are going to happen in the next century. In this century, even if you're a young person now, 20, 25 years old, you'll be alive in 2090 maybe. And then the sea level rise is only about 0.5 meter. But at the end of next century, oh boy, you're going to have water all over Nelson.
Okay, with that,
Thank you.
Dire warning, we thank you very much, Todd. It was important that we bring that report into our forum proceedings. So thank you very much for doing that. We now have the arts spot with John Paul Pochin, and it's a surprise to, we don't know what John Paul's going to do. So over to you, John Paul.
Nothing scary, I promise. When I was putting together some slides today, and yeah, and we're all friends here, right? You know, you're not going to criticize me too much. I will share my screen if that's all right. So if I can. There we go. So, and this follows on quite nicely, I think, from what Tor was saying. And you know, it's like how many people actually read the IPCC report, and you know, and are actually actively engaged at that aren't involved in, you know, how do you engage the whole population in the meaning of behind that? But, so I thought this is a subject that's been sort of on my mind, and something we've talked about quite a bit recently, and it's come up in our society and culture group. So I thought I'd go through this, but first, just to step back a little bit and use why you know, why art, why would we use it in this context, and art, it can give you an emotional response, tell a story, invoke thought and self-reflection, connect you personally with the subject you're talking about, and take you beyond the science. And the last line there, I was thinking, well, probably slightly controversial, and it certainly has some, people have different opinions on that. This is observance that when I was in Auckland, you know, and if you get to go to a new gallery, and whenever I'm in Auckland, you know, you're sort of running around. There's so much to take in, gallery after gallery, and you know you've only got so much time. So the artwork's become, you know, it's like getting a whole box of chocolates and eating them all in one go. But this particular work just really caught me, and it's a video, and it's in slow motion, and it's a series of maybe 10, 15, 20 people that are just walking towards you and looking at you and then walking away. Which is really powerful. And it made me feel quite guilty. I'd been at Greenpeace at the time, and I'd been with people who were protecting the Waiheke Island, the bay there. So I started to wonder whether I was doing enough. So anyway, and you can tell from my voice, it's actually just really caught me. But art can tell a story, and it can paint a picture. And I often think of car adverts in this context, and you look at this, and you can't see the person in the car, because the person in the car is you. This is a machine. They're selling a machine, but they're not selling a machine. They're selling you a lifestyle, a future. There's no cars on the road. There's another one here. It's almost exactly the same pose, but no other cars, no person in the car. And in the 1950s, this is the vision that they the artists were trying to conjure up in you. This real this exciting. It's post-war. It was technology was going to save us, and what a wonderful world it will be when we've tamed nature and pretty much paved over it. There isn't a single tree in this this drawing, which I find quite interesting. And this actually brings me to the council renderings, which I'll probably get into trouble for copying all these images, but and this is sort of the opposite. I mean, even I find this a little bit controversial in that I've got so much. I find this a little bit misleading, but it's actually a wonderful representation of a world that we could have. And I strongly urge everybody to tell council this is the world we want. And so it's a great artist impression of that's really conjuring up this possible future. And on the radio the other day, we were talking about the Martin Luther King speech, and what this did. What he described a future in his speech, and it was very powerful. But science is different. It's facts. You can't distort facts. And this is one of the books I got lent just yesterday by somebody in our group, and but it was quite interesting because it's Rutherford's book. It's on splitting the atom and everything. But I thought the foreword in this was quite interesting, and it talks about it's when you write something, even something like this, you can tell it in a way that makes it interesting, that engages the viewer or the reader. And you think of Stephen Hawking's book, which was written for people that weren't scientists, but it was a science book, and it had incredible appeal. And another book I got lent yesterday was this, which really talked about the visualization of science, and it's really interesting. And it's it's quite nice. It splits things up. It has examples, and it's saying, asks you to figure out, who the audience is, how will it be used, what is the goal, and what is the challenge. And they're quite good questions to ask when you're looking at that engagement of science to especially who your audience is. When you think of the IPCC report, again, how many people read that? And this is one of the visualizations in there, and it's a wonderful. This is electrons that have been trapped around inside a ring of iron atoms, and you can't actually see this. It's just a rendering. It's a representation of something that is beyond what light can show you, because it's at the atom level, and but it's beautiful, and it's really caught everybody's attention at the time. But the question that I on the visualization that should be asking, I think, is what is the story? And a lot of the work I've done recently, this has been we've sort of been asking this question. And this is, I've shown this before. This is the soil model I've been working on, and we're doing further models now with other scientists. And the problem we have is sometimes scientists will talk to us, and some won't. When I was first working on this, a lot of my viewpoint, and this is when it was up in the City Gallery. So the great thing about this was that this was in a major gallery for months. There's 3 of these things on the wall. So it had an enormous engagement. And all through this, when I was writing it, I wanted it to be defensible. I wanted the science of, what happens in the soil, and this is plants growing in the soil. They're quite a simplified model, and it is incredibly simplified, probably overly, well, it is overly simplified, but it tells a story, and it's engaging. And the soil is infinitely complicated, and you couldn't model it. So this is an art piece primarily with a science base, basically. And I actually took, just recently, just for fun, I took the model, and I said, I did share this to a few people, and said, don't share it, and now I'm just putting it online. But this is a map of Nelson. So what I did was I thought, right, okay, I'll take the soil model, which splits things up into cubes, and I'll take the data for Nelson, the height data, and I'll plug it into that. So this is it was up to about 10 million cubes it took to build this. And I'll feed water cubes into the river and see what happens to them. And you can see, you can see the wood there sort of flooding. You can just about make out Trafalgar Park, just in the sort of middle towards the right there. But the water flow is not scientific. I mean, it was very crude. It was sort of thrown together. The way that I model the water is incredibly crude and non-scientific. So you couldn't use this as a scientific tool. But when I've shown it to a few people, it's generated that story, it's generated that conversation. So does it have its use still? And this, we're looking at the moment of and doing a model of Nelson, to sort of represent, well, to show the sea level rise and the flooding. So it's been a conversation that's been on my mind. And this is interesting because I was actually looking for an example of this, because science and art has been combined, forever, really. It's only recently that we seem to have separated them and had these very defined lines between the subjects, which are artificial. You think of like Da Vinci, or who was an inventor and an artist and scientist, but this is 2,000 years old, and it was only recently discovered. It had been discovered and pretty much put away, and nobody really saw the significance of it. But this is a device to show the movement of the planets, which so it's to show scientifically, basically knowledge of the time. So it's a great, incredible visualization tool. And of course, we've done this, and I love this painting. I was trying to find another example of this, and this is a painting from the 1700s of, what did it, what are they called? But basically a planetary system. You've seen them, the mechanical devices where you see the planets going around the sun, and the movement of the planets. And I just love the way the children are looking at this. And this is NASA, and this is one of the exoplanets. So nobody knows what it looks like. It's far away, and they can sort of guess what it looks like. And so they get an artist, and they get them to paint it, and it's great because we love to see these things, and it's NASA does this a lot, and it gets people excited about the science. It gets people excited about the universe and wanting to know more. And this is another one, it's another exoplanet. There's and the way they've shown this, or the way that it's like, well, what would it be like to stand on this planet? Because we're never going to do that. But it's a great visualization, and it's made up. Nobody knows what it looks like. They've got some ideas about what the temperature would be and certain things like that. But it's just a lovely way of engaging people with the science. And we were talking about this today, and a friend of mine mentioned this, and it's the some here will recognize. I don't know how good the picture is, but it's the pale blue dot. So just I don't know if you can see it there. I don't know if you can see them, and that's the Earth. So that was just before Voyager left the solar system. They turned the cameras back and they photographed the Earth. And on its own, it's just this dot. But when you put some words to it, and you won't be able to see all these, but I'll see if I can play a video just to finish off. Because when it was Carl Sagan, I think, put the words to it, and I don't know, can I share? I don't know if you'll, do you get the sound from that? Probably not. I'm gonna have to change it. No, okay. I think it is a setting on here, isn't it? How do you do it? Share sound.
That's home.
Can you hear that?
That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and triumph they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. in our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit? Yes. Settle? Not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's, I've lost John Paul. Oh, there he is. Yes, right. Thank you so much, John Paul. I think we can't overemphasize how important the artists among us are in the shared endeavor as we try to draw everyone together to move ahead with urgency on our shared task. So thank you very much for adding that to.
You're very welcome. Yeah.
Right. Okay. With that in our minds, we move into our next focus, which has to do with climate conversations, that we know very well that we must rapidly cut our emissions and increase sequestration, and that we have to start now. And this is going to transform our way of life, and change is really difficult. We resist it. Our job in the forum is to reach out and try to bring nearly everyone along on this journey, supporting the necessary changes. What changes people's minds? How do they absorb information about where we need to go? People they like and trust, listening and talking to people they like and trust. Climate conversations are a crucial part of what we need to do together. So in the July Hui, we identified people that we'd like to reach out to. And I'm wondering, Marlene, are you able to show that slide, which is derived from a much longer and more complete list of people that we want to reach out to? But this is just a reminder of the thoughts we arrived at in that Hui. How do we do this skillfully? There are lots of resources, and we listed some of those resources in the invitation to this Hui, and you may have been able to read some of them. We're going to use a modified version of from the Canadian David Suzuki Foundation. We think it's simple and effective, and it's based on underlying values of caring and empathy. Can we get back to the full screen of faces? Thank you very much. So caring and empathy as the basis for conversations, and establishing or affirming relationship and commonalities. It's not combative. It doesn't focus initially on throwing data at the conversation partner. What it does, there are 5 elements of such a conversation. And the first one is establishing the relationship and commonalities. Even if it's a person next to you in a queue for something, and your commonality is the tedium of waiting, establishing the commonality is the beginning of the conversation. Then ask ask about the conversation's partner's views or observations or concerns. Then listen and reflect back, showing that you've taken in what your conversation partner has said. Fourthly, agree when it's possible to agree. There are usually things that you can agree with, as you'll see in the role play ahead. And finally, share your own story, why you're concerned, what you do about it. So we'll show you a little clip from the David Suzuki Foundation, and then we'll introduce our 3 role players to play out a conversation. But first, the clip, if you would be so kind, Marlene. But as Marlene's getting this, I'll just remind you, the relationship, ask, listen and reflect back, agree when possible, share your own story.
Are you okay, Marlene?
He's got it. I think she can probably experience that herself. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Okay. Well, that was a little more silent than we intended. But we got a glimpse at the revered Suzuki himself. And I think you could probably get the idea that the megaphone style is not the desirable style. There is a better way, and we're about to see an example of it with the help of Barbara and Tim Robson and Kendra Douglas. Thank you. Over to our trio.
Oh, hi, Lucy. Good to see you. Barb, sorry, we've got a visitor. Is it convenient or?
Yeah, we're on Zoom.
It's Lucy from down the road, you know, that keen gardener I told you about. Yeah, I think she's quite keen to come and see us.
Bring her in. Yeah, bring her in.
Oh, thank you, Tim. Thank you. Thank you.
Have a seat. Lucy, is it? Lucy.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm Barb. Oh, thanks a lot for these. Yeah, Tim said you had a great garden, and obviously, you haven't been here long. You've done a hang of a lot in a short time.
Yes, of course. I love gardening. Great way to get to know where I'm living now, and to share stuff with neighbours and get to know them too. But I see you guys are into gardening just as well.
Yeah, when we've got time, there's lots of other things happening as well, really.
Oh, I thought you guys were retired. I mean, you'd have plenty of time for your garden and getting out and about.
Yeah, in theory, yes, but we're pretty busy with grandkids and also quite involved with climate change stuff.
Yeah, I saw a sign on your letterbox. about the sort of climate forum stuff. Like, but what can a mere mortal like me do about climate change? Anyway, weather's always changing. Well, even though it's been, you know, a little bit more dramatic in these last few years.
Yeah, truly, definitely more unpredictable and much more than it used to be. But what have you noticed?
Well, I guess it makes me think about the bushfires that I heard that you had in Nelson. That's before I came here. But that was a bit of a one-off, surely. Well, I don't know, that was bad. And then they say climate change is the cause of that. I don't know what to think. I mean, mostly I don't want to think about it.
So you see bad weather events and hear that climate change affected them, but it's hard to know what to think and put it out of your mind, because what can you do?
Yep, you've got it, Barb. Besides, if I thought climate change was doing all that, well, but what can I do about it anyway? There's nothing I can do. You've got all these fanatics wanting us to give up cars and walk everywhere. I mean, they're in cloud cuckoo land.
So you're feeling that climate change activists can make people feel pushed to change their lifestyle?
Yeah, true. I've noticed that, and I get a bit annoyed. I mean, as if me, you know, walking more or changing my light bulbs or riding my bike to town is going to make any difference to that. So what makes you get involved with climate action?
I guess we feel we're doing our bit by making really incremental changes, and lots of our friends are too. There are quite a few on our street, actually, who are regular bikers, for example, and the neighbours over the road are pretty involved in all kinds of things. There's a real community feel around here, well, just a feel about doing things that can make the changes we need to make for our grandkids. A number of us are on a bit of a zero waste journey, but I'm sure you're really good at composting.
Composting? Well, yeah, of course. And my plants love it, of course. And I have read that it's good for the environment, but it's only such a small thing.
But I guess if lots of us are doing it, can make a difference. And of course, we're also trying to get some higher level change too happening as well, trying to keep council on their toes, central government. So would you like to join us sometime if we're doing some community planting? Actually, there's one coming up at Snowdon's Bush really soon. I reckon you've got lots of practical skills and that they're a great group of people. We just feel that anything we can do to limit our carbon emissions helps us feel like we're doing something for creating good, really.
Well, I could do that. Don't know where Snowdon's Bush is. You'd have to help me get there. This has got me thinking. I've got to go now, but maybe we could talk some more about those community things that I could get involved with as well as they arise.
Sure.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Hey, and thanks again for these.
My
this
pleasure.
Is massive. I'll bring you some pickles shortly.
Whoa, look forward to that.
Nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bravo, Barbara and Kendra. Thank you very much. Were you able to pick up the elements there of affirming the relationship over the leaps and the new arrival, and where Barbara asked what she had observed, and then she reflected back what she heard, repeating quite a number of times. And then Barbara told her own story of involvement and made it sound jolly attractive, I must say.
We're off to Snowdon's Bush this weekend.
There you go. Any questions or comments about that little role play and the elements that we've pulled out? In the reading stuff, there are many systems. Some of them have 9 elements or 13 elements to watch out for, but we thought this 5-element pattern was very easy to remember and apply. So any comments or questions, because we're going to ask you to do it yourselves in a minute. Kendra.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to make the comment, and I mean, it's something that, you know, I talk a lot about in the work that I do around community development, community-led development, is that thing of just establishing rapport is really the first step, isn't it? And staying connected and not trying to take, you know, a big leap. It's just like, don't underestimate the small building of just something in common and affirming someone, so that then there's a sense of trust.
Very, very well pointed out. Excellent. Colin.
Yeah, I like the dialogue. I tried something similar with the farmers when they came to the market square the other day. I don't know if you encountered them. Very angry about the government and the regulations that were being imposed on them. And I tried to be nice, and it wasn't easy. I mean, I talked about their concerns, asked questions, hopefully did the right things, but ultimately came up against a brick wall. So I really didn't know where to go from there. If anyone's got any ideas, I'd be grateful.
Kendra, go ahead.
If I could come back to that, because I think that's a really interesting dilemma that we face, is that when people are very aroused around any issue, they're not open. And so I think in that situation, just doing what the very basics of what Barb did, which is just to affirm and to reflect back and try, you're not going to go anywhere, so not even trying, but actually just getting alongside them and reflecting back. I can see this is really upsetting you. You know, it's that classic, you know, reflecting back and just letting people run with stuff and just staying alongside them. You're not going to change them then, but the fact that you're willing to just listen and hear their pain or their rage or whatever it is, and just let it be, and recognizing now is not my time. And my time, if I can just keep the space open and friendly and warm and kind of in a way just let it be, then they'll de-escalate, hopefully. And then there's the time that you might come in.
Nicely said, Kendra. Colin.
Can I just come back on that? Because we had a Green Party meeting on this very subject, and we had a leading Green come and show us how to talk to people who were not on our side, as it were. And he said, ultimately, what works is that if you expose your own anxieties and in a way put yourself in a position where you know, they can start to feel sorry for you. And I mean, we tried it in pairs, and it was an interesting experiment, but I found it emotionally very difficult, because you have to let go and you have to trust the person to respond appropriately, you know, and that's not easy if you don't know them. I mean, obviously you try to create a good relationship, etc., as I did with the farmer. I mean, we shook hands and we were fairly friendly when we left, but there'd been no comeback either side.
Right. Okay, what we're going to do now is actually try it out a bit, just remembering those elements. And Marlene, I apologize, I forgot to ask you to show them, but let's just remind: relationship, ask, reflect, listen and reflect back, and share, agree when you can, and share your story.
Can I make
Marlene,
a comment?
Oh, yeah, sorry, that's Tord. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry to barge in, but I think, Colin, there are two parts to the communication. One is the sort of emotional and our interpretation of the IPCC report and other information that comes through. The other one is technical economic. You know, if you're a farmer, you own a piece of land, And as a landowner, you need to get profit so many $1,000 or $100 per hectare each year. Now, different kinds of farming have different incomes and also different greenhouse gas emissions. And I think that the forum should spearhead scientific and economic analysis for our region, which shows which land areas could actually be switched from the current methane producing farming to a different kind of farming that protects the planet. And that's facts and science, and it's not emotions. And with those facts and science, it may very well be that a large area within our region could be converted, and the farmers themselves will like it because they earn more money. And it's not just planting pines.
Thank you, Tord. Marlene will split us into random groups of 3, and I will give you some instructions for how to use the next 15 or so minutes. Choose a couple of roles for conversation partners. For example, some of us might like to choose farmers, but you might like to choose your daughter or your father-in-law or your hairdresser. Hopefully there will be time for all 3 in the trios to play both yourself and an unconvinced conversation partner. So take a moment to get yourself into the role of the conversation partner. Just think, who are you? What do you think or avoid thinking about? Establish the scene such as Barb and Kindra did, a neighbor visiting with stuff to share. Avoid the temptation of hamming it up, because you won't learn much from that. And the third person observes and makes notes to comment on the what went right and what may need another go. Share the observations and experiences and then rotate. And you will have only about 15 minutes to do this, maybe 20 before we stop you. Okay, so Marlene will now divide us into trios to practice a conversation, 3 conversations if possible. I guess we press not now, do we? Maybe. Okay. So is that it, Marlene? It's all divided up? Can't hear you.
You still need to join your room, and yeah. So here, yeah.
Okay, so Rachel won't be joining a group because she's cooking dinner.
Okay.
Sorry, so sorry.
No problem.
Okay, that's okay. We're really pleased you're here.
I'm bouncing backwards and forwards between the computer and the wok on the stove.
Amazing. Amazing.
And I'm really sorry that I was late. I just went for a walk and took a little bit longer. So
that sounds like a good idea in your busy life, Rachel. And Julie Nevin is also putting her kids to bed. But Julie Cave, do you want to have a go at a conversation? We don't want to deprive. Oh, you're not up. Okay, that's fair enough, Julie Cave. That's all right. We could have a go if we wanted to. I just need to keep an eye on the time.
Yeah, I've got an eye if you want. I've noted.
You
yeah,
so,
I will keep the time. It's 8 8:37. I mean, just to
Yep.
have.
Okay. Do you want to have a go?
Oh, I'm not prepared, but yes.
Yeah, nobody else is either.
Yeah.
Do you want to have a go, Jack? Not you still got a headache. So do you, yeah.
Yeah, and there is a room, otherwise the room where there is only David and I think Anya. So maybe if you want to join this one, do you want?
Sure.
I will just try to how do you do how do I do that? Yeah, so I will pop you in this room. Do you want?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it looks
I'd like
empty.
you to.
Okay,
Yeah.
see you.
And you'll stop us, will you? You'll stop us.
So I will send a message 2 minutes before and then I will stop at
Super.
35. All right. Yeah. Okay.
Can I just ask a super quick question?
Yes.
Joanna, if you're still there.
Oh, she just left. Sorry.
Do you know what's happening after this? I'm just trying to decide whether to whether just to leave the meeting or to come back at 8:35.
Yeah, if you want. I think we've got a debriefing after that, 15 minutes too, and then after a few words about the next meetings and everything. So if you want to be updated, maybe for the final words, you can come back.
Okay, so 8:35 is it? I'll come back.
Yeah, this is the debriefing. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Bye. Joanna, you have to unmute you.
I think we're all back,
yeah.
Except for those putting their kids to bed. Okay, there's a few minutes for reactions, things that you learned in those conversations. So just pop in your reactions to that experience. Make sure to unmute yourselves. David.
Got it. Very simple, needs practice.
I thought you were pretty good. you cut to the chase after about 42 seconds. Yeah, Jenny.
I think it's very useful to have an observer, because they can have an overview and they can help and prompt, whereas you get a bit tangled up.
Yeah, excellent. Excellent. And Colin.
Yeah, I got dropped in at the deep end because I was told to be the farmer that I had my row with in the market square. and that was not easy. And I don't know what Bruce and Dave and Peter think, but I don't think I did a very good job defending the farmer.
Did you have more empathy for the farmer at the end?
Well, Peter suggested a much calmer approach than I used, so I think I'll let him speak to that, but it wasn't easy, you know.
Okay, Jace.
I think that in every situation like this, you can always imagine that some changes to the lifestyle or their careers, which are going to be beneficial, like the changes that are going to be necessary to ensure a viable future, are there. People are going to, some people think are going to like it. That, I mean, you know, electric cars have great takeoff, and you know, how much they like riding their electric bicycle, or you know, anything, what, you know, that they want to sell more vegetables locally, and that we're going to, you know, there's almost anybody is going to have something which is going to be an improvement in this new economy.
Excellent. Tord, is your hand up?
Yes, my hand is up.
Go.
Well, just to follow on to what Jay said, we discussed this briefly. The fact that if you have this conversation with someone who is in a position where it's quite obvious that for economic or social reasons, it's very difficult for them to change their lifestyle, you know. And Jace was a lifestyle block owner with SUVs and other stuff in his on his section, and if you're a farmer, it's the same as I said before. Somehow we have to find the positive actions that reach for them a win-win situation. And I think that would be a good project for the forum to start developing that. Thank you.
John Paul.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. We actually spent a lot of the time chatting, which was really nice as well. Always good to have a chat. But yeah, it was good. Anne was my wife. We took something, you know, much more close to home, I suppose, and you know, a big part. I mean, empathy just came up so much as a subject, you know, and it's really important that we just put ourselves in other people's shoes, really. I think that was the main message, I think, in this, and it's really easy to yeah. Would you have anything to add, Anne?
Well, I think we had another conversation too, and it had to do with the topic that was being talked about by a couple of people just a few moments ago. And our conclusion wasn't that you have to find, you know, something to convince someone to do in every situation. We talked about some examples where there are people who are in situations where really you have to ask yourself, is it fair to place any responsibility for change whatsoever on them? And that it might be better to think about, you know, how the burden of change should be distributed more equitably and more justly. And we felt quite strongly about that. I think we realize that that's the case here at home in New Zealand, and in every country around the world. There's a lot of differences between countries, and within countries and regions, there's a lot of differences between people.
Very good point, Anne. Thank you. Any final points that anybody wants to throw in? Oh.
Yeah, well, I will.
Yes.
Yes, Colin mentioned his being the farmer, and he was a very angry farmer. And so the task was to stay with his anger for as long as possible. I mean, it seemed endless. And that was a problem. I found it very difficult to stay with the anger for a long enough time to kind of, I don't know, I was going to say talk him down or something like that. but it's not really talk him down. It's more let him find his own kind of peace with what was going on. Yeah. So lots of practice, as David said.
Yeah, and in some conversations, it wouldn't all happen in the first encounter. Okay, thank you everyone for being willing to do that exercise, and I hope that it was a little bit helpful to you. The last few minutes will be spent on a number of things, a few things to let you know and a few things to ask you about. I want to note that there's now a Give a Little page on the website, and there is a project that would be quite happy if you were inspired to give a little, and that's the Arts Expo project for school children, being produced by the Stratcom group, and they are quite keen to have some money for prizes for the children's art. The outcome of that will be an event on December 11th and 12th, but it would be lovely if people had a little to give towards prizes for that. We want to remind people that you can receive help for resourcing your projects and also help in actually making funding applications. A couple of other things to let you know about. The TDC is into its consultative period about coastal management, which is a big issue for all of us, either in Nelson, in NCC area or TDC area. But on Thursday, this Thursday, the 30th, they're running a couple of webinars on this. One's from 12 to 1 and one's from 7 to 8. So to participate in feedback to the TDC, if you're a Tasman person, and I'm just looking around the people here, not too many of us Tasman persons here, but you're encouraged to attend that webinar. We want to remind you that Anya is now producing her excellent newsletters at the very beginning of every month. And if you want to get something in the newsletter, please get it to her by the end of any month. Okay, now there's a call out here for particular needs. The schools group is eager to have more people as part of it. So if you've got any space in your life for an additional project, the schools group would love to have you. We also are pretty keen to reconstitute the land use group. And in relation to that, particularly people who are interested in protecting good arable soil from housing or commercial developments. And if that is a particular passion of yours, Kendra Douglas, who's on the screen called Barbara Robson, there's Kendra. Kendra, would you be able to wait after we formally close, just after 9? And if anybody thinks that they want to work with you on that, then you can identify them. Okay, thank you very much. Let me think. Okay, that I think, oh, yes. In relation to future hui, I'm interested in knowing, I know that a lot of the people on this screen are retired people. Could you put up your hand if you're a working person who works in a workplace? Yes, yes.
Half a hand.
Okay, righto. All right, really quite few. That that just bears on decision making about future hui. I would like to use a few minutes now to actually ask for your input about future hui. Any things that have crossed your mind that you've thought would be really good focal themes for future hui. Have a moment to think about it. And yes, Anne.
I think it would be really good at future hui to just remind people about, all the foundational documents and operational procedures and things that everyone who's involved with the forum kind of, needs to know. Because the thing is, things get put together and then they get filed on the website, but then, are people aware of them? And it'd be good to remind us all about them.
Excellent point. Thank you. Other
suggestion?
Rachel.
So I attended the Sustainable Development Goals conference recently, and it went online, unfortunately. It's meant to be in person, but I came across a woman who has got an initiative called Bead and Proceed. And I can share the details, but basically it's kind of almost like a craft project for understanding the Sustainable Development Goals. And I thought that something like that could be really a useful tool for kind of talking about climate issues, all the different aspects. So it's just I would really love to bring her to Nelson and have her maybe run the workshop for, I was even thinking the schools group or something, because I kind of think it's relevant to the schools group. It would be a great tool for people going into schools to kind of work with young people. But it might also, I just wondered whether it could then be kind of modified to be relevant to climate issues rather than just the Sustainable Development Goals, of which climate is just one.
Rachel, I think it might have been, I think I've come across something that has used something like what you describe applied to climate. I'll have a look and see if I can send it to you. I thought it was brilliant. So thank you for that suggestion. Any other thoughts about what you'd like to see in future hui?
So I've got a question.
Yep.
Not allowed, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask or not. So maybe this is something that you can take to the leadership team, but I am thinking about putting together an open letter encouraging Nelson City Council to transition from clearfell pine forestry to kind of nature-based forestry per Anne Salmon's recent article. And so I'd really love to know if the Climate Forum would consider being a signatory to the open letter, or if the Climate Forum doesn't feel they could, then maybe any individuals within the forum. But they're like, basically the council's about to start logging all those mature pine forests, and if we don't act now, we're gonna just lock our next 2 generations into the same kind of land management and all the issues that come with that. So
that would be a super move, Rachel, and I think you could see lots of nods and thumbs up. We'd have to do it in a way that could formally be said to represent the forum, but we can do that. Is there a timeline on this action?
So I'm not sure yet. I'll just I'll work that out and then I'll contact you, Joanna, maybe about it.
Okay, good on you, Rachel. Thank you. Okay, any other, just want to cull any other ideas? Barb.
This slightly pertains to what Anne was saying, I think, in terms of people understanding what was going on and getting a bit of connectivity between different groups. For me, it's consistent with Weaving Plan idea. At the moment, we have groups, and a number of us have been sort of overlapping groups, as we've talked about before, but I feel there's quite a need for a bit more awareness of what other groups are doing and how that pertains to what we are doing. And someone in one of the other groups was also suggesting that there could be real benefit in us having regional connectivity groups as well, or at least being aware of where people live in terms of focusing on resilience within our communities.
Oh,
So
interesting idea. We could do that with a sociogram in a face-to-face hui.
Yeah,
that would work quite well. Oh, thanks for that interesting idea. Okay. Okay, I must say that there's sharing of some really helpful ideas here. Okay, and I think that might be it. So, all right. Any last words of commentary or thoughts on this forum before we have a closing karakia? Anything that you feel really should be said before we finish?
I've just got a tiny little update, if anyone wants it. Just from, I guess it's in relation to climate in schools, really. I have been working on putting together a sustainability policy for Nayland College. And I presented it. It's been kind of, let's say, a year and a half in development at the moment. And I presented it to the senior leadership team last week and got support to take it to the board. So I'm taking it to the board tomorrow night. And if they approve it, once we kind of have it finalised, I'm really keen for that to then be available for other schools in the region. And I'm really happy to work with people on that. It could also be used for other groups as well. So it's kind of a high level policy, but then with different layers, looking at the goals for the school or the organisation, and then what the actions are going to be. And based on the Sustainable Development Goals, just because I really like the broad approach of the SDGs. That seems quite relevant, you know, to a diversity of young people at schools.
This is highly relevant to the schools group, Rachel, and I think the people in the schools group will be very eager to understand more closely just what you've been doing and to have a look at your sustainability policy. And once again, good on you for these moves. And I can see it's taken a long time and persistence to move with this. So triple good on you. All right, time for our closing karakia. And I'm using one that Jill Harker has shared with us, which uses the metaphor of the end of a waka journey. We've come to the shore over the seas. Ko te hā, ko te pō, ko tangaroa, ko te mana, ko te kotahitanga o ngā māta waka. Haumie, huie, taekie. Thank you, everyone. Lovely to be with you tonight. And thanks for all your good ideas. And thanks, Marlene, for being our helpful backup person.
Yes. So now we are. I will close the recording, but people who want to stay, we'll let it open for a while, 20 minutes, half an hour, and then we close it. So
thanks for mentioning that. Yes.
Thanks so much, everyone. Ka kite.
Yeah.
Ka kite.
Thank you, Joanne.
Nice to see you all.
Ka kite.